be the focus of these 2 days and really this entire course. And hopefully as many of you as possible are signed up for the entire course where you can be committed to taking this all the way through, because I think it's just an outstanding opportunity for you. And as we look at soil health, you know, I'm going to spend the first part of the morning here. We are kind of reinforcing why are we even worried about soil health anyway. My goodness, we're in the middle of some of the best God-given ground in the planet. Why would we need to worry about soil health? You know, we've got this dark soil, it's high organic matter that comes from the tall prairie and will raise some of the best yields in the world. And hopefully the take home you get at the end of the week is that even the very best inherent soil on the planet still can perform and function at higher levels if we start regenerating some of that natural function and natural soil health that was intended for those soils. So that's kind of the goal. It's when we talk about soil health, we talk about, many of you that run a yield monitor, you've seen what that yield monitor does when you go across an old fence row or the corner of an old pasture that you've now brought into production. And these are things that happen. If you look at that yield map, you see what happens on that yield map. What happens? Bumps, not just a little, but a lot, right? It'll be some of the, however you got your colors set up, it'll be some of the brightest colors on your map. And what we're trying to work toward is achieve that kind of function on a farm-wide basis, because all of it is possible. We see what is genetically possible from the tremendous science of genetics that's going on. We see what's available on those areas of the field, and there's really no reason. We understand enough today to move in the direction to regenerate that kind of function on all of our land. Okay? And as we're getting that kind of function from our land from a production standpoint, we're also, the beauty of that is, we start achieving that kind of high function from an environmental services standpoint. It's going to help on these water quality issues. It's going to help on air quality issues. The things that we do to regenerate the function of our soil from a production standpoint are the things that are going to also help us address the concerns of our end customers. And if we don't think that's important, you can put your head in the sand, literally, and let that go by. But those end customers will ultimately drive where agriculture is headed. They just, information is too available today to think that's not going to be a major driver in agriculture. So that kind of framework, I'll hit a couple of things real quick here, and then we've got some demonstrations we want to start, and we'll get you all to help with some of those. But as we look at soil health, and so as you look at a lot of people in a lot of magazines, if you read any magazine, you're going to hear the word soil health mentioned. And I think the main thing that we want to focus on is that function of soil. But as we look at managing, if we think of soil health as something that capacity of that soil to function as a vital living ecosystem that sustains plants, animals, and humans, that living ecosystem, as soon as we as managers start thinking of the soil and the importance of the life in the soil, if we think of it as a living thing, we will, like we do with our livestock, like we do with our children, we take care of living things. We nurture them. We provide the things that living thing needs, the habitat, the nutrition, the water. We tend to treat it differently when we think of it as a living thing. And so at the end of the day, at the end of these 2 days, you're going to have hopefully a better understanding and appreciation for how important that biological component of the soil is for regenerating and restoring true function in the soil. And so with this as our definition, or a lot of people in our agency even have developed spent a lot of time and energy, a lot of cautionary dollars has gone toward embankment type things to hold this water on the land and trying to mechanically keep it on the land. And what a tremendous reservoir we've got out there if we just let it into the soil where it wants to be anyway. And so that's the why. And we'll probably spend more time the rest of this course talking about how and with what would we get this system in place from a logical and a practical standpoint. Farmers are the most brilliant innovators in all of business. If they understand the why, and if they understand the principles, they'll probably figure out the how and with what. And it may be different for different producers and different enterprises, but we have to at least, they need to know, all of us as humans, that's our human nature. When somebody gives us a new task to do, I need to know why do I have to do this, you know. And if we understand the why, and it makes sense, how is something that it's in our very nature to invent how and with what. Okay, so I want to talk about indicators of soil health, and there's a ton of indicators of soil health. Okay, here's a blue pass because you guys passed the test. Here's our principles again. But part of the longer definition of soil health, what is soil health, is these principles, but it's understanding the indicators of soil health and understanding those indicators that are at risk and what are the ramifications of it. So if we look at kind of what we've been doing for a long time in agriculture, and it's not that we were doing anything wrong, we were doing what we knew how to do with the technology we had at hand. Okay, it's just what we tilled the soil because that's what we knew how to do. Okay, so after a couple of centuries, really, we have to remember that we haven't really been here that long. You know, you've got to look to old civilizations to figure out what the real risk is. We've kind of been able to float along on this God-given wonderful resource that we've got here for a long time, but really it's not a long time. But if we look at it from a long-term perspective, what we're doing, as we add in intensive tillage to this soil resource, and we leave insufficient crop residues, we don't have the soil cover. We have low diversity. We have low cover over the soil surface. Then the spiral of kind of degradation and lack of function starts to happen without us, and it happens gradually, so we don't really realize it's happening. Because at the same time this is happening, we're getting tremendous new technologies. We're getting tremendous advancements in genetics. We're getting a lot of things that are holding our yield stable or even increasing it. But what's happening to our soil resource as we adopt this kind of management is soil organic matter decreases. We start losing it. We have erosion. We have compacted subsoil. Aggregates break down. See that picture up there? I'll talk about it more in a minute. But we've kind of, I feel like in our agency, the first place you got to evaluate is yourself. You know, you look at what have you done, you know, what are you telling people? And I think I'm guilty of being part of letting people believe that if they've got flat soil erosion is not a problem. And I'm not trying to redefine a whole new category of erosion. But even on flat soil, if you've got really flat soil, do you have an erosion problem? I'm going to suggest that you probably do. As it's affecting, it's not necessarily leaving the farm, but as it's contributing to lack of function, The first erosion, the first step in erosion is detachment. When that raindrop energy hits it, if you have low aggregate stability, you see what happens. The soil detaches, and what's the first erosion transportation that happens? Straight. It goes straight down, right? Or first, it detaches. And the first erosion that's being transported, it's not leaving the field. Our first erosion is straight down. It's straight down, filling those pore spaces that Doug was telling you are the most important part of the soil. Okay, so if that erosion is truly happening and it's going straight down and filling up the crust, it's forming that crust and filling up the pore space, that's immediately going to slow the function of every other part. So if you continue down this, surface becomes compacted, crust forms. Okay? So what are we going to do if the crust forms? What have we traditionally done when the crust forms? Hit it again. My God. We got to crust, we got to kill it, we got to get rid of it. Tillage begets tillage. Okay? I'll fix it with something that's exactly like what just caused it. You know, there's a definition of insanity. If you keep doing what you've been doing and you expect a different result, that's the definition of insanity. So if you do what you did, then you get what you got. And what you got is a compacted, crusted soil. So more tillage is not going to fix that. Okay? So we've got to understand that tillage begets tillage, and we're not going to fix a soil that's degraded with more of what caused it to be degraded. Okay? I'm through talking in circles now. As soon as you get this, obviously infiltration decreases, erosion by wind, water increases, yield consistency declines. Okay? Then you get more pondage. I saw numerous fields. How much rain did we get the other night? We had a pretty strong storm, came down pretty quick. What was it right in this area? A couple inches? Or did you even get a couple inches? Saw a lot of areas where I'd seen the residue float up because you had a big old pond. So the bottom line is if part of the field ponded, that means part of the field ran off. And all these things are happening. That's why we're getting more ponded. Persistent wetness. We can't breathe. We can't. You ever held the thumb over the straw and pull it out? Water stays in that straw till you let the thumb off. So you get less air and water movement, less rooting, lower nutrient access and nutrient efficiency because now we've gone anaerobic. Okay, less diversity and more disease and more pests. More soil organic matter starts leaving because what are we doing? We're killing it more often to break that crust. And so we're going to continue doing that. We're going to nutrients in topsoil continue to be lost. Crop yields ultimately decline, and if you take it to its final extent, keep in mind we haven't been here long. Look to old civilizations. Are they having a little trouble feeding themselves? It's the number one reason for war in most of these very unstable places is because they cannot feed themselves because they've destroyed their soil resources. So hunger and malnutrition is the ultimate thing. Now we're not quite there yet. We've come dangerously close 2 or 3 times already in our history though. Okay, so we've got these really key organic or these indicators, and there's a whole list of them, and I probably won't even hit all of them, but I'm going to hit some of the key ones. The key soil health indicator, that this is kind of part of the longer definition of soil health. When we're talking about soil health, we're talking about indicators like organic matter. We've already said we've harped on aggregate stability, water infiltration, water holding capacity. These are all things that we have lab tests, field tests. We have absolute tests to measure these. There's been tremendous amounts of scientific research done on these and what they impact as far as water quality, production, those kinds of things. Nutrient cycling, soil biology, erosion. The list goes on and on. Structure, respiration, enzymes, CEC, pH, bulk density, macropores. And they're all part of understanding soil health. The key thing that I want to drive home is, though, when we're talking about regenerating soil health, we have to make every one of these indicators an action word. So we're going to be talking about, we want to continually be increasing organic matter. Increasing organic matter, improving aggregate stability, constantly improving. That improves and increases water infiltration, water holding capacity, improves your nutrient cycling. It's all these indicators have to be in an improving state. And you need to be thinking with every step of your management process, how can I make that be continually improving? And it's not always simple, it's not always obvious, and that's why we have meetings like this, because, when you start putting cover crops into your cropping rotation, that sounds easy, right? Just plant some cover crops, you're good to go. You have to look at what everything else does that affect in your management. What's it doing to your nitrogen cycle? What's that doing to your water cycle? What's that doing to your pest cycle? You have to understand how all that fits. So it's not always easy, but it is going to be a major improvement if you can master these details. So these are probably the key ones. There's more out there that we can measure. There's a whole bunch of things, but I've got the key ones here with an ing attached to them that are pretty obvious and pretty plain and easy to understand for most producers in the room and most crop consultants. These all make sense. The beauty of it is, a lot of people, we come under a lot of criticism when soil health first took off, and they would say, there's no science behind what you're talking about. There's no science. I can't do a Google search and find one single paper that says soil health equals 10 more bushels of corn. Can't find it. I said, well, you're looking for the wrong thing. Yes, it's probably not, because soil health is kind of a new term. However, if these are the indicators of soil health, I'm going to suggest that if we look at indicators, these are just a few that I picked. If we look at increased reactive soil organic matter, increased aggregate stability, reducing erosion, biodiversity as indicators, these are just 4 of the indicators that I picked. Is there any scientific literature that proves that these are okay, that these are good for us? Well, there's tons of it, as it turns out. And it goes way back to the 40s and the 20s. We've known about these things, that increasing organic matter increases water infiltration, increases nutrient cycling, increases water holding capacity, increases porosity, improves water filtering. That does all that. And there's reams of scientific literature that substantiates it. Reams of literature that substantiates aggregate stability and its effects on all of these other things that are beneficial to us. Less erosion. There's lots of literature that studies. That's been studied to death, is erosion, and it shows all these benefits. Biodiversity. We all know that crop rotation. There's lots of evidence. We see it every time we look at the yield monitor and go across an old fence row. Biodiversity has a lot of benefits to the system, okay? So there's no shortage of scientific literature that supports this when you break it into the individual indicators, but that's what science does. Science takes, that's the very crux of how we do scientific research. We take a thing that we want to study, break it into components that we can statistically analyze and get repetitive results over and over. You can't hardly do that from a broad system, but you can from individual components, and that's what we got. But if you put all those together, and then you continue looking for research, there's all kinds of reams of research that increased water infiltration improves productivity. Guess what? That makes sense, doesn't it? And there's increased porosity. Increased porosity improves productivity. All these things improve productivity. Environmental quality. There's all kinds of study on environmental quality. So we know that these things all lead to higher environmental quality too. There's no lack of scientific basis for most of what we're talking about, and I would say all of what we're talking about. if you know where to look in the literature for that. So these indicators have to be part of the overall understanding of soil health and understanding of how we manage for soil health. Okay? So it has to be not a destination, but more of a journey.
You have somebody on farm and you might have a pasture, 80-acre field and a pasture in 15 acres. And you'd be farming that half a mile and you come through and then you hit that old pasture and the yield go up. And why? And
that's the important part there, that so many growers don't ask why. And sometimes you can't figure it out, but going, connecting the dots is really important.
And then back here where we got the pit, thick ground, it's pretty highly erodible. I mean, topsoil just didn't have hardly any topsoil. And we were real bad, Mike Plummer and all of it. We never did write the date down, never did take the picture. But this summer, the corn, I had the corn, and you could walk through the cornfield. That corn right here might make home 25, and you walk 25 foot, and the corn make 35. And why? So I got Mike Plummer, Dennis Edson, Steve Evil Hair. There were probably 7 or 8 of it, and I took the football. I just went out in the field and I just mowed strip, and then we took the backhoe and we dug a backhoe for probably 75 foot. And the good corn didn't have that plow pan, that white earth. And anywhere you had that white earth, that's where the poor corn. And you could just see it, you know. So, you know, what do you do? Everybody said, well, you can't do anything about it. It's just farming. And I don't know why, I tried to find, I got a third grant on cover crop. And I wanted to study cover crop on the same ground every year. You can never find a cover crop that's been on that ground. If you found something that cover crop and then till it, cover crop until it, whatever. So we got this third grant and we went back here and we put cover crop on the same ground and no till. And then I don't know why we did all of a sudden one day decide, well, you know, let's do some digging. And so we went into the cocoa digger and digging. We seen root going down through. I've always told a plant that didn't hold your root that big. So we got it April the 9th. We got to digging. We had ryegrass 4 inches tall, root 72 inches deep. And so we found that. And then I said something to Mike. I said, Mike, let's go back and auger it and see what the corn root does. So we go back and auger it, and the corn root would go down that big. So we plant cover crop, and April the 9th, every year we go around and do digging. Because we always want to see the same time of the year. And so it just kind of from that point. Oregon ryegrass, they came through here, they wanted us to grow ryegrass to see if we could make a cover crop out of it. And that was kind of, we got to digging in that. Before I was planting hairy bed and buckwheat and rye. And so what kind of happened to me, we was growing ryegrass, but we weren't growing other cover crops to enhance that. We were going for the deep root, and I got probably 15 years behind on putting other cover crop in. So that just, and we went back on that field because I told Mike, I said, if we can get anything to happen on that field, it'll happen, you know, it can be done anywhere. And that's why we went back on that Craig Hill field.